Hello, and welcome to the 17th Annual Food Justice Summit. My name is Enrique Orozco, and I am one of the co-organizers of the summit this year. Before we start your session, I want to highlight some of the accessibility options, engagement features, and explain how to access interpretation services. Hola, y bienvenido a la 17ª Cumbre Anual de la Justicia Alimentaria de Chicago. Me llamo Enrique Orozco y soy uno de los coordinadores de la cumbre este año. Antes de empezar, quiero tomar un momento para indicar las opciones de accesibilidad, las herramientas de participación y los servicios de interpretación. Para acceder a los servicios de interpretación, fíjese al lado izquierdo de su pantalla. Al hacer clic al botón que dice Audio Captions, se abrirá una ventana. Haga clic en Select y luego elige el lenguaje de su preferencia, inglés o español. Comenzarás automáticamente a escuchar al intérprete. Para acceder a los servicios de subtítulo, elige el botón que indique CC. Se tiene que elegir una de estas opciones. Para escuchar a los presentadores, elige la opción Floor. Se puede cerrar esta ventana. Finalmente, deberás silenciar el video principal para no escuchar a los presentadores e intérpretes. Estas opciones también se pueden encontrar al lado derecho de su pantalla, bajo la pestaña que dice Interpretación. To access interpretation services, look at the left side of your screen. By clicking on the Audio Captions button, you will open a window. Click on Select and then choose which language you would like to hear, English or Spanish. You will automatically begin to hear the interpreter. To turn on closed captioning, click on the CC button. You will need to select one of these options. To hear the original speakers, select the Floor option. You may close this window. Finally, you will need to mute the main video in order to not hear the original speakers and interpreters. These features can also be found on the right side of your screen under the Interpretation tab. The platform also offers a number of visual accessibility tools. To find them, click on the profile image at the bottom of your screen, and then select Accessibility Adjustments. You can also change the language of the window through this pop-up. Under these accessibility adjustments, you can select different options to make the website easier to read. We welcome you to participate in the conversation through the chat window. Clicking again on the Chat tab on the right side will open up this screen. Select the box at the beginning to begin typing into the chat. At the end of the session, we will open for a brief question and answer portion, and you may type your questions here. Afterwards, I invite you to open the polling tab to answer a very short survey that lets our team know how well we did in planning these sessions. I hope you enjoy the 17th Annual Chicago Food Justice Summit. I will now turn it over to your speakers.
Good morning, everybody. We're so happy to be here with all of you to present our Cultivating Wellbeing Research and Outcomes. I'm Joanna Michael. I am currently serving as the director of the Urban Medicine Program at the UIC College of Medicine, which is a 4-year community engagement curriculum for social justice-minded medical students. My life's work, however, is in exploring the deep cultural uses people have with plants for medicine, for nutrition, and for overall personal and collective well-being. My international work includes a Fulbright Fellowship in 2003 to Guatemala to study Mayan traditional medicine for women's health, and in 2007, a second Fulbright to study the effects of internal conflict and relocation on the nutrition and well-being of women and children in Medellin, Colombia. As a Chicago native, it has long been a dream and a vision of mine to capture the cultural practices around health happening in the segregated enclaves of our beautiful city. And now I'll pass it over to Molly for an introduction.
Thanks, Joanna. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to our session. We're really excited to be able to share our research with the public in this way. I wanted to introduce myself a little. I'm Dr. Molly Doan. I'm an environmental anthropologist at UIC and an adjunct curator at the Field Museum. My research centers on the relationship between communities and their environments in Mexico and the US. My published work includes a book on community-based conservation in a Mexican forest and research on small-scale organic farming and farmer cooperatives in Mexico and Wisconsin. In general, my research focuses on the overlooked work of Indigenous people in protecting the world's forests and movements that seek to protect livelihoods, the environment, and transform the food system. And today, we're so excited to share our recent work in community gardens. So this is a picture of Hello Howard in Rogers Park. Um, and our research concerns the idea of well-being in Chicago. And this research has a little bit of a background. In 2015, we joined forces with Alika Wally, who is the North American curator at the Field Museum, to develop a project about well-being in the city. Alika's research has centered on how working people in Chicago think about climate change and the environment. So, what are regular people, as opposed to large scale developers, doing to improve their neighborhoods and communities? So, what do people care about when it comes to the environment, and how does that link to their well being? So, our work builds on these ideas to explore how migratory human and non human beings learn to grow and flourish in our city of steel and glass. We explore the connections between nature, health, and growing new roots. On the north side, newly arrived refugees bring their practical knowledge, plants, and aesthetic dispositions to gardens. It's there that they create familiar smells, textures, and ways of interacting as communities. They work through traumas of displacement, pass on traditional knowledge to children born in exile, and sell their produce at farmers markets and for mutual aid. On the near west side, Latino activist gardens plant prairie flowers on remediated brown sites. They tend to monarch butterfly chrysalis in order to maximize the chances of emergence and transmigration to Mexico. And on the south side, Black women with Southern roots care for their neighborhoods through gardening, healing the wounds inflicted by racism.
Molly,
Yes.
I think you're showing the wrong slide deck. We can't see any pictures.
Oh my goodness. You're not seeing any pictures?
No, it's an old, looks like a slide deck with like a brown label.
Oh
It doesn't look like
no,
what we made.
this is bad. Um, let's see. Let me see if I can make this go. Um, are you seeing it now?
No, just you.
Oh,
It's still the wrong one.
that's so weird. Let me go back to here. Wow, that's your screen. I don't know what screen that is. Okay, so I am not sharing my screen apparently. Here, let me try this again. Um, okay, share. Is that working?
Not yet.
Ooh,
Oh, yep, now it is. It looks like that looks like the right one.
okay.
Yes.
So, um, okay, now let me go to, this is gonna take up some of our time. Okay. Is that working?
Yes, looks good.
Okay. So, anyway, you didn't see some of our photos, but you should be looking at a picture of Hello Howard. Is that what you're seeing? Um, so our So basically, our research has um, centered around three broad areas of the city. So our initial research sample included 26 gardens and urban farms around the city, and a smaller sample of those gardens in Rogers Park, Albany Park, Little Village, and Pilsen and Englewood became the main focus for the ethnographic and ethnobotanical work that we continue to pursue. So to date, we have carried out over 100 taped interviews with gardeners, activists in gardening organizations, and personnel in community serving organizations. So our intention has been to apply action-based and advocacy lenses to these interviews in order to amplify how people are healing and creating community every day in these green spaces, and use it as a way to disseminate this information to the general public. So as a result, we have been attending conferences, community events, activities related to gardens. I have volunteered at gardens in my neighborhood, growing food for mutual aid, and I'm also a garden leader at Howard Area Community Garden in Rogers Park. And generally speaking, I've been active in my neighborhood around struggles over public space. And Joanna has been bringing conversations about food apartheid into the medical school and forming partnerships with community agencies and local farms as part of the UMed longitudinal community engagement work of medical student teams. And dozens of UIC undergraduates and graduate students have been involved in data collection and analysis on this research, so that also our students come from the community and they've been engaged with the community, and they're also learning how to do anthropological field work as they participate in this work with us. So I wanted to just get into our work here, and starting with this kind of grim photograph of a gleaning day at Hello Howard in Rogers Park in late October. So gardening is not that easy in Chicago's short and sometimes volatile gardening season, and it requires drive and passion. So for that reason, we ask our gardeners, why do you garden? Given that it's not always easy. So aside from, the basic um, obvious benefits of producing your own vegetables, herbs, and flowers, we found that gardeners express a variety of reasons for why they garden. Sometimes they come to gardening with one motivation, but develop additional ones over time. Based on our data, we have grouped these motivations into 4 broad categories: placemaking, health, environmental justice, food sovereignty, or slash food futures. These themes are present in gardens throughout the city. And there are some subcategories to all of those broader themes that hopefully you can see on that slide. So, for simplicity's sake today, we're going to focus on placemaking and health on the north side, environmental justice in Pilsen and Little Village, and food sovereignty and food futures in Englewood. And I just wanted to add that we will be finishing this presentation with a 5-minute film that was produced by the Field Museum and is great, and reviews all these neighborhoods. So I want to start with the theme of placemaking on the north side, so the northeast side. And I just wanted to invite you to take a look at this photograph taken by our fabulous photographer, Paul Bick, in the Global Gardens Refugee Training Farm. And to me, this photograph really captures at least what I think about when I'm thinking about placemaking. So, um, this community gardens which is also an urban farm, it's both, um, is in the summertime full of, especially a lot of climbing plants plants that grow over structures that were created from found materials by the gardeners, so that the garden looks more like a series of little rooms, with comfortable spaces that you can retreat to out of the sun and sit in. And it looks like a place where you're at home when you go there. And you can also tell just by the way people dress, and that, sometimes they're not wearing shoes, that they feel comfortable there and that they can um, just be themselves. So in this particular slide is showing a Bhutanese, a refugee from from Burma, who is, you know, obviously watering her plants. And in this quote, a gardener on the north side indicates that making place is both a social and an ecological process. So she says, when you live in an environment like this, you get really disconnected from the earth, from the ground. So there's something really uplifting about walking into a garden. There are probably 7 different kinds of birds just in the garden right now. There are butterflies, there are a million different kinds of bees, and it's something that you're creating. And I think in an urban environment, there's so much taking. There's so much, you get your food just by going to the grocery store and you don't put a lot of thought into it. I really don't feel that that's a very constructive way to live. So I like the idea of creating something in a place where it's really difficult to create something. Nobody manufactures anything anymore. Nobody makes anything. So it's nice to make something, to create something that's yours. So I think that this really captures what placemaking is about. And I like the way this quote really points to the way that as people, we can actually build places that are habitats for animals. So this photo that I'm showing now is a photograph of me with my friend Chinar, who I met on my first day as a gardener at Hello Howard. I had recently relocated to Rogers Park, in the process losing the garden that I had had previously. Chinar introduced herself, and soon her husband, Khalid, came over carrying a tomato seedling. My encounters with gardeners like Chinar turned my passion for gardening into a research project. When Khalid came over with his tomato seedling, he explained that this was a special kind of tomato and that he had brought the seed from Kurdistan, propagating them first in Turkey, where they had fled from ISIS, and later um, in his Chicago garden plot. Khalid described his shock at the Chicago winters, his feeling of isolation and incarceration in their small apartment, and the toll that stress and anxiety was taking on his health. Khalid told me about his discovery of the community garden and how it had helped his family. And so this slide just shows me with Khalid's kids, Khalid and his family. So here's a quote in Khalid's words. He speaks English, and he actually speaks a language called Matoy that is has so few speakers in the world that he actually can't get a translator in Chicago for his native language, but his English is pretty good. He says, when I found Howard Garden, I planted the vegetables with my dad too. My dad has a heart problem. He's sick too. He's 81 years old. His heart's very weak, no power to work, but still, he also loves gardening every day, walking slowly, slowly to his space when it has some vegetables. Me and my dad, we think in the same way, like he needs something to do to survive. So in the morning after breakfast, he goes to the garden, he waters, and day by day, growing the plants, and he is waiting for something, which is the harvest, something to take. It's not important. He can easily buy from the supermarket any food he likes, but he likes to do something by himself to feel he's still alive. Me too. What I'm doing is the same thing. I still feel that I am alive. I am something. We're still alive. We still have something to do. But if you give up and are staying home waiting for somebody to feed you, maybe death will come earlier. And this is a photo of Khalid's dad, who is in his own country is a healer. So for many people, a sense of place is bound up with personal agency, autonomy, and freedom of movement. For refugees who are often restricted to small apartments and menial jobs and with few social connections, the space of the garden where one can roam around freely with one's family, where work is voluntary and off the clock, is truly a sanctuary. Many refugee gardeners are enrolled in English language classes at nearby Howard Area Community Center. Many refugees and immigrants are coming from the Congo, Burundi, Bhutan, Burma, and many places in Latin America. And some were small-scale farmers and gardeners back home. One of the women who helps orient the gardeners when the refugee gardeners, when they are brought into Hello Howard, told me that before receiving plots, gardeners learn in their classes the English words for various garden tools and activities. They're really excited to be gardening. And when spring finally comes and everyone receives a garden box, a few of the refugee gardeners, seeing how small their plots are, start to cry. But people are good at making place. Many refugee gardeners import extra soil to build generous berms around their boxes to increase the plot size. By midsummer, Hello Howard's discrete boxes disappear under exuberant boundary crossing foliage. Expressions of political and social values are aspects of placemaking in the gardens as well. This slide shows an annual event at Hello Howard Garden that includes a gnome painting contest. So these are white, like stoneware or ceramic gnomes that you then paint and decorate. This gnome is wearing a pussy hat from the Women's March and holding a sign that says, "Hate has no gnome here," which is a pun on home. Hate has no home here. After Trump's election and his so-called Muslim ban, neighborhood gardens and organizations expressed support for refugees. For example, neighborhood participatory budgeting funds in Rogers Park flowed to Gale School for Gale School for garden and greenhouse repairs. Adjacent to Hello Howard, this public grade school is notable for its dynamic mix of refugee, immigrant, and Black students. This slide is a newspaper article about the Gale School and its gardening projects. In the gardens, you also find a lot of information about what's going on in the community, where demonstrations are, and you find people to go to those places and do those things. And so this is a Black Lives Matters demonstration in Rogers Park last summer. I can't remember. My sense of time is getting bad. During COVID, gardens became central for information about COVID and to mutual aid networks in the neighborhood, donating hundreds of pounds of fresh vegetables to free food delivery services, community kitchens, and community nonprofits. And so this slide just shows an information sheet about COVID in Spanish and English that the Chicago Community Gardening Association distributed to gardeners so that we would know what advice to give gardeners, like to mask, for example, in the gardens. This slide features gardeners Paul and Tammy, who are garden leaders at Hello Howard and who grow produce for donation to Food Not Bombs right now, but sometimes to Howard Area Community Center. And this photograph shows a bumper crop of cabbage being delivered to the kitchen at Howard Area Community Center. And this photo is a gardener at nearby Howard Area Community Garden, which is different than Hello Howard, watering the parkway beds, which provide free vegetables to passersby and community residents. In addition, a lot of mutual aid around sort of gardening supplies and gardening seeds has taken off during the pandemic. So In this photograph, a refugee from Burundi at Hello Howard is receiving seeds from the Rogers Park Seed Library, that started operating fairly recently. And all of these places I mentioned form an amazing network of community. And so one thing that my students have been doing is producing network maps derived from coded data that show how community gardens in each of our neighborhoods, this one is of Rogers Park, are connected to community centers, refugee agencies, food banks, other gardens, environmental organizations, and sort of key people who are connectors. Gardens are part of a connected community, and a connected community is the essence of what constitutes place. So I'm going to turn this over now to Joanna to talk about health and plant medicine.
Thank you, Molly. So similar to the makeup of our city overall, many of the gardeners that we collaborate with have roots in different countries. Yet when they come here, they also bring with them their traditions and practices around food and medicine. For others, the physical space of the garden in itself has provided healing benefits. And Molly, I think you need to advance the slides. So there's yes, and the next one is a quote from an Inglewood gardener saying that the garden was her pharmacy. So this was my pharmacy. Not only eating came from this garden, because for a year I only ate what came from this garden. But afterwards, looking forward to getting back to that and seeing how, well and healthy I was getting over the course of that. So she shared a lot with us about finding a refuge, and even if it was just watching butterflies in the garden, or socializing with people. Even her doctor mentioned that her recovery was phenomenal, and she attributes that a lot to her time in the garden. So this, I'm going to go just in a sampling of some of the plants used as medicine. This is a picture of Manmaya in a Bhutanese gardener in the north side, the Global Garden Refugee Training Farm. Bitter melon is found throughout there and used by a lot of the gardeners there. And a lot of the gardeners that are diagnosed with chronic diseases are often integrating this plant-based remedies alongside prescription medicines. So bitter melon is one case in point. It is a complex plant medicine with a long history of use, both as medicine and food. It is often used to regulate blood pressure, to treat diabetes and psoriasis, to regulate menstruation, and to treat infertility. So some of the quotes related to this from some of the farmers at the Global Garden Refugee Training Farm. One said, people who have a blood pressure problem would eat it raw, but not too much. It should be consumed in moderation. Then it is balanced. And I'll say that the idea of Ayurvedic medicine, of a balance, the doshas and things like that related to Ayurvedic medicine is a very common theme among the gardeners from this garden. In Bhutan, there were people, and also here, there are my neighbors, and also an old man, a Bhutanese man who has high blood pressure. There are a lot of people who use bitter melon. Some of them even freeze what they have in abundance in their freezer and take it out to use it when they're not able to grow it in the garden on the off season. The next plant is pokeweed, commonly thought of as a toxic plant among many, but is often used to promote women's health issues related to, I'll say that it's considered a weed for many farmers, but among these refugee farmers from Bhutan, they consume the young leaves only, as it's known that toxic compounds do increase with age and leaf size. Knowledge of how to prepare the leaves are actually passed down between farmers across generations, and related to women's health in particular, it's actually the root of the plant tied around the abdomen of the pregnant woman during labor. So this is used as an external application. And their explanation when we interviewed them about that was that if the placenta and other things won't come out, there is a risk of those things going in the upper side of the body. So that's when they use the pokeweed root. So it stops the the placenta and the stuff, from going up in the upper side of the body, which can kill the mother. And this would help out and help it come out. So the next plant and the last plant I'm going to mention in this section is wood nettle, or what's known as stinging nettle, because of the hairs on the leaves that leave a stinging irritation on your skin. This is known as a weed to many, but we understand that a weed is just a plant growing where we don't want it to. And in fact, this and many other plants are considered medicinal. So this is, for one of the farmers said, this is medicine. If you cook nettle and you eat it, it reduces the tingling sensation in legs and also helps with burning sensations around here, gestures towards the abdomen. It also helps with other burning sensations in the body. So now I'm going to pass it over to Molly, who's going to talk quickly and briefly so we can get to our video about environmental health and justice.
Thank you, Joanna. Yeah, I'm going to briefly talk about environmental health and justice in Pilsen, where this was a theme that appeared in many interviews, and in the physical construction of the gardens. So this slide from El Paseo Garden in Pilsen says, "Caution, bees working." In addition, monarch butterflies are a potent symbol of identity in Pilsen Gardens, a neighborhood with a strong Latino identity and transnational ties to Mexico. Midwestern monarchs depend for their survival on a cyclical migration pattern between the central highlands of Mexico and Canada. That annual migration takes 5 generations of monarchs, a relay race of sorts. Monarch caterpillars depend on milkweed as their sole food source. However, monarch butterflies have been in steep decline over the past 20 years due to a combination of factors, including loss of wild habitat and increased herbicide use. So Chicago gardeners host butterflies by planting milkweed on which monarchs lay their eggs, protect their chrysalis from predators, and provide pollen food for the butterflies in the form of native wildflowers. Caring for butterflies is a way to reflect on the perilous journeys undertaken on wing as well as by foot, and a form of planetary and human reconciliation. And here we have some quotations from gardeners in El Paseo Community Garden. So first, Marta telling us, "My parents and grandparents were interested in plants and herbs. My grandfather was a curandero, which in Spanish means a medicine man. He had all his notes, and so he knew what all the plants were. You get a bug bite and you can use that plant right there. Milkweed. This is milkweed." And another gardener says, "Yeah, we also raise the butterflies at home from the eggs that I find here just to keep them from predators and such. I've seen predators take them out actually, and it happens just from reading about this. It happens just from reading about this stuff. Spiders, ants, there's all kinds of things. I mean, only like 1/10 survives in the wild or something. So just help them along a little bit, and then we release them back here." So I also wanted to include this quote. This is in Spanish, but I'm going to summarize it in English. One of the gardeners we've interviewed has really emphasized the role of the gardens themselves as places for environmental health and justice. So she has pointed out that this quote says basically, "The knowledge of how to care for the earth, the knowledge of how the air we breathe is healthier and more pure um, with the plants that produce oxygen for us, and very important for us and for our survival as human beings. Right now, we have the problem of the Hilco plant, which was just demolished and is affecting our community and our community gardens. And our community gardens are a little lung where when you are here, you're breathing air that is cleaner and purer and that can help you avoid illnesses like asthma. And now with COVID-19, our lungs are being affected, and this will require that we have a much stronger immune system to deal with these problems." Okay, so I think probably at this time we should move on to our video, and that means that don't get to include some of the photographs. I can go through them really quickly, that that we took in Englewood, but fortunately, our film heavily features Englewood. So I think a lot of the themes we wanted to get to are going to be covered there. So let me go back to the organizers so that they can connect. Oh, you think I can still run? Oh, they're going to connect us to the film. It's good.
I actually grew up in the neighborhood, and my granny, she from the South, so she grew up around gardening. And once we moved over here, we had a lot next to our house, and we just started growing food up in there.
Al regresar a venir a vivir aquí a Chicago, me di cuenta de que existía este programa, me enamoré.
It's like not even being in the city when we come to this garden.
I also wanted to be part of that, altering or transforming that narrative that, you know, greening is only for people who have money.
I said maybe when I'm going to the United States, I'm not found this kind of seed. Many seeds I brought from Turkey.
I grew up not always being here in the city, but every summer going to North Carolina, being on the land, and actually that land was passed down. My family were slaves on that land, and my family still keeps that land in the family. I have been blessed to have that opportunity to go down south to see what living on the land really looks like.
If you're looking for land, you're not going to find it in Lincoln Park. You're not going to find it in Bucktown. You are almost, given no choice but to come to a neighborhood like
Englewood,
North Lawndale, Pilsen,
Rogers Park.
West Englewood.
The greenhouse in the school.
Little Village and Brighton Park.
People say grow yourself on your own soil. Well, what better place to grow than in a garden?
For me, it's relaxing.
When I have a problem, I go to my garden.
And I can sit there for a long, long time and just watch what's going on and feel really connected spiritually to, life in general.
I enjoy it because it's a big stress relief. Like, I get lost gardening. It's like I go to another world.
Coming to this green, peaceful, lovely space was what helped me. It was the medicine. It was my pharmacy.
For me, community gardening is good for the soul. If you eat better, you think better, and you can do better.
What we got growing today is cucumbers, peppers, eggplant, jalapenos.
El chile, el tomate, la cebolla.
A wheelbarrow full of onions.
Como el tomillo, el ajo, el orégano, el epazote.
Already we were able to harvest June berries, gumi berries.
We just harvested some garlic.
In your house, when you make something in your garden, you eat it, even you close your eyes, you eat, you feel this is tomato and how much taste is nice and healthy for your body too.
Urban farming, gardening, even in your backyard, whatever your case may be, it gives you the opportunity to resist the industrialized food system and to re-engage and reconnect with real food.
It really is a very political act because you're also taking into consideration determining your own health and determining pretty much like your future, because your health is your future, right?
So for this garden to be on a space that was formerly occupied by drug use, I think speaks volumes about what can be accomplished when you turn the tables from violence to peace.
And even if we don't know if growing a tomato is going to cure the crisis that we're in the moment, it allows for us to feel like we're moving forward. It allows for us to care for each other.
And particularly after COVID-19, after we socially isolated so long, we're going to need to come together. We're going to need to be out in green space. We're going to need sunshine. We're going to need fresh air. And what better way and place to have that than in gardens?
Okay. Um, are we back to me? Okay. Am I still screen sharing? Okay, great. So, I guess, I guess we should take some questions. It seems like there are a lot of questions. Um, oh, the museum exhibit piece. Okay, sorry about this disorganization here. Um, we just wanted to let you know that that film clip comes from a museum exhibit that we have up right now at the Field Museum. So it covers some of the things we covered today about the community gardens, as well as herbal pharmacies in Chicago, and includes the film that you just saw. So that exhibit will be up until June 22nd, and we really hope some of you will be able to go see it. And we have been, this is our third, exhibit gallery. We've exhibited at a gallery and at another small museum in Chicago. So this is our way right now of doing public education, although we're definitely looking for other opportunities to do more of it.
And I would just add that, as researchers, we think of ourselves more as action-based. And so part of this was thinking about ways of bringing voice to gardeners and to the activities of just kind of ordinary people, and thinking about new spaces like museums, where we typically think about cultural artifacts as things of the past, and thinking about how can we bring in, current livelihoods, current activities on the streets into the museum as these are cultural practices that we're doing every day, and just rethinking with our collaborator, Alaka Wali, ways of using museums that connect with community and disseminate all the wonderful things that are happening in our city.
Yeah. We would love to take questions. If people wanted to put them in chat, I think they can be posted to us. Mary Eisner had a question in the chat I can answer. So what's the name of the refugee garden and location? So that garden is called Global Garden Refugee Training Farm, and it's at Lawrence and Sacramento in Chicago. And actually, one of my former students, Haley Larand, who was a research assistant on this project, is actually now running that farm. And I don't know where my thank you slide went. Let me see. There it is. And you could contact Haley. She has an Instagram account that you could find if you look up Global Garden Refugee Training Farm, and there's a website. She would be a good person to get in touch with if you want to either visit the garden or if you have ways to network, which she is very interested in.
I just want to, Wendy Hernandez asked about resources to acquire empty lots and Neighbor Space. I would recommend reaching out to them and learning about the incredible work they do to make sure that some of these plots are used as gardens, and there is a way to collectively advocate to get some spaces in your community into garden plots. So they've been doing amazing work, and a lot of these gardens are because of their advocacy and commitment to that.
Yes, there and also the Chicago Community Gardening Association is amazing. Also, it's a volunteer organization. Basically, they have a conference every year also, that's coming up, um, and they have a lot of resources for sort of understanding how gardens work. And I would really recommend, if you're interested in getting involved in community gardens, that you look up the CCGA, the Chicago Community Gardening Association, and go to their conference, which is soon, like in a week or something, because you'll learn so much. If you want to reach out to me or Joanna, we're both at UIC, University of Illinois at Chicago. So my email is just mdoane, my last name Doane, at uic.edu. And Joanna is J Michael at UIC, which you can just Google either of us, and our UIC email addresses will immediately be there. So we're easy to contact. You can also contact me through howardgarden@gmail.com, because I'm the garden leader for Howard Area Community Garden.
I see Oren's question. Hi, Oren. He was in the video. How would we develop a project that creates habitat or even a small scale that replicates wild settings such as a woodland or a meadow? Molly, you want to?
That would be so fun. I think that neighbor space is flexible for projects of that kind. If they're, say, if you're thinking about abandoned land or unused land, and maybe it would be possible to talk to them about whether people have done it. But I think that would be amazing and wonderful. And I think we need a lot more of that in the city. And I just wanted to say that when I came into this project, I was reluctant to go to a community garden, because in my academic world, gardens are associated with whiteness and gentrification. And I don't want to be part of either of those things, you know. Um, and um, and so going into the gardens and finding out what they're really about was amazing, to me. And I think oftentimes these things like wild spaces, like Oren is talking about, and community gardens are being pitted against housing, so that the city, that developers come in and say, we can't use this. This is happening at Hello Howard right now. So there's this. It'll probably be demolished for housing. But the housing is not affordable. It's not serving the people who already live in the neighborhood, because the rents are higher than most people are paying. So there's this sort of artificial, this leveraging of this gentrification critique to try to, that makes it difficult to talk about how important wild spaces are and garden spaces are for people in every neighborhood. Putting a museum exhibit?
Yeah, how was the process of putting a museum exhibit? It's very interesting because we are not curators, right? So we learned so much about the ways of putting hours and hours of research, qualitative research data into an exhibit. But the process, I think the follow-up question is kind of who contacted who. Alaka Wali, the cultural anthropologist, has long been thinking about these more alternative uses of museum spaces to connect people. And so I worked there as a graduate student in the herbarium, and she remembered my interest in ethnobotany and my background in that. And she was familiar, she knew Molly and her work. And so she actually was the conduit to kind of connect all of us. And I was thinking more about plant medicine in terms of the herbal pharmacies, and Molly was out in the fields and the gardens. And so when we got together, we started thinking about how all of those things interrelate. And that's how we started to put things together. And yeah, I don't know, Molly, if you want to say Anything else?
Just, I'm so glad that we got connected because this project's been, you know, it's been so wonderful to be in the gardens, to work with Joanna. You know, we've become very good friends. To get connected to the broader food community, food justice community. That you know, I feel like it was really lucky, but the project really did start through the museum connection. So Alico's really looking for ways to represent the living city of Chicago in that museum, and to do more work in the museum that's relevant to our communities here. And so this is what we ended up focusing on.
So we'd love to continue working with farmers. We hope to continue to do interviews and learn more. Oh, someone's asking about getting connected to the connection map, Molly, that you offered.
Yeah, just email me, and I think that would be fine. I might have to excise a few personal names, but it's mostly about organizations, so I think I could do that. We have one of those for each neighborhood, and we're still working on them as we get more interviews and go through things. And then we're going to try to do, you know, connections between neighborhoods, among neighborhoods, with this incredible community gardening world.
Yeah, I think that we're at time. That kind of wraps up. Thank you all so much for the wonderful comments in the chat and your enthusiasm and your inspiration through your own love of gardening. And we look forward to continuing to connect with a lot of the gardeners out there. And we know your work is a lot of advocacy and activism too, and that's so important. So thank you all for joining us and for the work that you do.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you for interpreting us.